Is renouncing family life and worldly life necessary for God realization? Very good question, and depending on where we go with it, it could be rather difficult to answer because there's so much that's relative here. In the broadest sense, no, and yes. It's renouncing family life and worldly life necessary. It's actually bigger than that. It's really, and maybe renouncing is not the best word to use here, but I'll use your vernacular since that's what you delivered. It's really about renouncing everything other than God realization. In other words, if you're holding that as your vision, to liberate your soul in this embodiment and to merge with God and live in that liberated state, it really has to be more important to you than breathing, more important than your wife, husband, children, your career, your money, your home, even your health, more important than anything. And if you have that, that is like a life insurance policy that will help you attain that very, very powerful and for many near impossible goal, though it is possible for everyone. So if it's more of a hobby or a passing interest, you're wasting your time because it's quite a mountain to climb, though it is climbable by everyone. So that's why I say it's relative in answering your question. It's not that you have to renounce your family, but you really have to renounce the whole world. And when I say renounce, I mean put it a distant second. It's talking about a level of surrender that is consummate, a level of detachment that is consummate, second to none, challenged by none, questioned by none, and that you would give anything, do anything, go anywhere. Now, oftentimes, if an individual can and chooses and does attain that state and lives in that state, then many times you can have some of these things you're talking about and many, many more. So it's really the attachment and the desire that has to be surrendered, that has to be renounced. Now, in so doing, because now you've aligned with that lofty goal of, I want nothing more than realizing my full divinity in this human embodiment, what follows now is that anything that stands in the way of that must either be surrendered, transmuted, sacrificed, altered in some way, shape, or form. So in other words, if any of those things are hindrances or in the way, or let's say they're not serving your highest good, they're not in alignment with that goal, then they would by their own nature fall away, which is different than renouncing. I hope that is clear to you what I'm saying. It's really saying nothing stands between me and God. I'll give anything. I'll do anything. I'll go anywhere. And I remember in my own journey, I had that direct experience. When I had, in 1992, my first direct and powerful experience of that omnipresence of God coursing through my veins, and tears streamed down my face, and that felt that current, that vibration coursing in me and pounding in my chest. The only thought that came to my mind was, I have to have this every day of my life. I have to live in this. I have to eat, sleep, breathe this. I would rather be dead than not have this experience all the time. And at that time, I was in a 2.5-year common law marriage, the greatest love of my life before or since that time. And I was at the peak of my career, having great success in show business, success as an actor. I had fame, I had money, I had friends, great sex life, great love life. I had everything. And yet in that moment, when I had that experience of God in my heart and in the room and all around me, it all just vanished for that moment. And that was all I wanted. I just ached to be consumed by that experience. And that never changed. Now, what was challenged and tested were my attachments, my investments, my agendas, and they came up. I thought I was rather detached. I remember my master saying, "Oh, beloved, you think you are very detached." He said, "You don't know the meaning of the word." And I felt rather offended by that and insulted. But he was right, as the masters usually are, always are. So, sure, it got challenged. But again, it was the things that stood in the way. It was in my consciousness. That's what renders the things in your physical life in the way. And then everything that is conducive to attaining that goal would necessarily stay, and everything that's not would necessarily have to go or shift form in some way. And again, if your gaze is on that goal, then it shouldn't really matter. Because remember, you come into the world with nothing, and you leave this world with nothing except the evolution of your consciousness. It's the only asset you take with you. So it always amazes me that how people, and they all do, can become so attached to things that were never ours to begin with, and which we cannot take with us, and which we don't own while we're here, though we convince ourselves and everyone around us convince us that we own all these things: our spouse, our house, our children, our cars, our careers, our money, our fame, our name, our bodies. We own none of it. Zero. And you take none of it with you, except that one intangible asset, the evolution of your consciousness. Secondly, as immortal beings, which we all are, think about the time span of a human embodiment, which in this day and age averages mid to late 80s. 80 years for an immortal being, an immortal soul, which is timeless, ageless, endless. 80 or even a 90-year life is one blink of your soul's eternal eye, a whole lifetime. Now you take that blink and break it down into, we'll call it 90 years. That's every year of your life is 1/90th of a blink of your eye. And a blink is that. So that is an entire embodiment relative to the age of your soul. That, 90 years. Break that one blink down into 90 segments. Break that down into 12 months. That down into 30 days. That down into 24 hours. I couldn't even do it fast enough. And so to become so attached to all these ephemeral things which were never ours, are not ours now, and we can't take with us, and that they coexist in a millionth of a nanosecond, and yet people are so attached they would kill for them. That, to me, is just insanity. And so attaining that goal of God realization is developing this knowingness, this realization of what I just spoke, and then divesting yourself of those attachments and agendas and realizing, what is this for? What is this about? Everything we have here in the first place was only sent to us, created by us, for the purpose of realizing God in the first place. It wasn't for us to covet and hoard, because that hoarding and coveting is what creates more and more separation from one's inherent divinity. So it's quite a paradox. So back to your original question, is renouncing family life and worldly life necessary for God realization? Yes and no. And now hopefully you see why.